Good morning, my lovely people, and welcome to July. I know we're a few days into July now, but it is the first Friday of July, which means it's time for our monthly Masterboard challenge. And this month, you probably can see where this is going by what's on my desk. It's going to be fabric. So we're going to do a patchwork style fabric masterboard. A disclaimer, it does involve sewing. So you can machine stitch or hand stitch, aka slow stitch. But, you know, some of you out there might not be able to sew, or you might not have a sewing machine, or your hands might not let you do slow stitching. You know, there's lots of reasons why people either don't want to sew, can't sew, or just don't like sewing, you know. So there are alternatives if you absolutely can't or don't want to sew. If you have a suitable glue, you can just glue the fabric down. If it's going to hold it permanently, I've never used Fabri-Tac, but I'm thinking something along those lines. My alcohol-based glue might be okay, something like this. I usually use this for fabric, but I'm running very low. Almost out, not quite out, but almost out. So if you have something that you prefer for fabric, then, or you have like a fabric glue stick, I think that's a thing. But, you know, so maybe do some test runs, and because I'd love for you to still be able to participate. Now, the other thing that might be a little issue for some people is fabric. I am blessed with a couple of huge bags of scraps from a quilter friend. So there's one tip for you. Ask a friend or a relative who's a sewer if they've got any scraps, because often they will throw away their smaller scraps because they want big pieces. They're making clothing, or they're, you know, doing whatever. So often they're happy to give away the small scraps. You might advertise in your local Facebook group or newsletter or newspaper or whatever you have in your local region, asking if anybody has got scraps. So it could be a complete stranger, but often people are happy to pass on the bits that they've kept because they thought they might use, but, you know, in reality they never do. So that's another option. If you don't want to ask or source from outside your home, there's also old clothing that you might have. You know, it's torn, it's ripped, the kids have outgrown it, because you just need pieces of these things. Old sheets that have passed their best use by date usually have patches that are still pretty good. Old pillowcases. So think outside the box where you might grab some fabric from. There are plenty of options. You could also go to like a thrift store and pick up a few scraps here and there. Often they're not very expensive. Sometimes they even have bags of scraps that you can grab, depending on where you go, of course. Ask your friends. You know, there's lots of places you can source fabric, and it doesn't have to be expensive. Right, that aside, let's get into the project. So we need a base. Any base will do. So just a bit of paper. I'm using this book page that's got this really horrible image here of, it's got a skull embedded in his fur hat. And I just think that's really ugly. If he didn't have the hat on, I wouldn't mind the image. But I'm going to use this as my base because that's a good use for it. It's going to cover it over. The other side is going to need to be covered as well after we've sewn it. So if you're not sewing, if you're just gluing, then just cover it at any stage with writing paper. But for those who are sewing, you need to cover the back after you've sewn your fabric on. And I will be gluing with glue stick to hold the pieces in place. Okay, so glue stick for kind of laying everything out and making sure it stays where you want it when you take it to sew. You need a base, you need fabric scraps, you need some way of sewing if you want to sew, so a sewing machine, or slow stitching if you want to slow stitch. Unfortunately, I cannot sew on camera. And apart from the reason of like I need to move chairs and do it, the other reason that I can't sew on camera is that the plug that I plug my sewing machine into is the same plug that I plug my camera lights into. So I can't run both at the same time. So a very good reason why I can't do sewing on camera. So let's get into this lovely, and this is just a part of what I got. I just grabbed out like, you know, a double handful, and I'm sure that will be plenty. And you can do totally eclectic, or you can keep it to a color theme, just whatever you like. I've got several little squares, squarish, it's not completely square, like this, and I'm just going to start with that. You can go torn frayed edges or cut edges. I think I'm just going to keep basically cut edges, and I'm just going to put some glue in the middle there and lay my first bit down. Now I am going to put it slightly over the edges, because if you're a sewer, you know that fabric often moves as you work, and so I could always not worry about it and just trim it down even further if it goes inside my piece of paper, but I thought I'm just going to put it over the edge a little bit. The glue stick is coming through the fabric, but it will dry, so I'm not worried about that. So here's another little square. Oops, that's fraying. So I'm just going to get rid of those threads. And I've got sticky fingers already, so that's wanting to just stick to my fingers. And I don't mind, like, if the edges that are cut fray, I'm just going to let them be, you know, take the loose threads off. But I think I will cut my fabric rather than tear it, just because we're going for that patchwork style, and I feel patchwork is generally more about the straight clean edges, but we're going to kind of meet somewhere in the middle with that. Now, do I want two squares side by side? Maybe I'll take this one up here. I'm going to overlap the fabrics so that we don't have gaps. This one's actually see-through, so I wouldn't want, you know, you can see the text. You can't read it, but you can see the text. So I wouldn't want to put something like that, or maybe like this pale yellow, over the image that I don't like, because you can actually see the skull here. So have a bit of think about, you know, if there's patches on your backing sheet that you don't want to show through. Okay, this dark brown would be a good one to pop over that, what I find quite offensive. You know, I'm not so much offended by it, I just don't like it. I just think it's ugly and gross, and it's not a real skull. I wouldn't think it's a real skull, but it's just not pretty. Not pretty at all. So I'm just going to cut some, and I'm kind of not too worried about whether they are a little misshapen. I'm not going to try and cut the, you know, it's like, oh, that's not straight, and try and get it straight. I'm just going to go with it because I'm overlapping anyway. So I'm just going to put this over the skull here. So you take notice of where I'm putting the glue stick. It's just a bit in the middle to hold it where I want it. Here's a bigger brown. I'm already getting a color vibe here, which is unintentional. I'm not deliberately choosing a colorway, but one is presenting itself, and I'm just purely grabbing out of the stack. So I find that quite interesting. I might use this piece whole. Let's pop, maybe we'll start down here. I don't want to end up with like squares all in one corner, if you know what I mean. Because I think that would just like, yeah. Just want to mix up the shapes a little bit. So any overhang that I've got left after sewing, I will just trim off. Okay, that's that. I've got lots of threads and fluff and stuff in amongst this pile. So coming to the end of the first week of July, just mind-boggling to me, but it has been a very busy week. So I guess when you're busy, time goes a lot quicker, doesn't it? Right, I think I'll do a strip of that. So I need about there, give or take. Also, when you take it to the sewing machine, even though if you overlap things can still move and end up with gaps. So I suggest just having a few small strippy scraps available at your machine or when you're hand stitching, so that if a gap happens, you can just add it in and sew it in without kind of like shifting gear. You know, you can just grab it as you're sewing, as you see the issue, and sew it in right then and there. And I'll also talk a little bit about how to sew the pieces on. I mean, you can do it however you like, but I'll talk about how I do it. I would love to be able to show you, but it's not going to happen, my friends. It's not going to happen. I'll put a bit more glue at the end there. It's a longer piece. So this one's not straight, so I need to bring it down a bit, so I've got that working for me. And if you've got any bits like this that are a bit bent and want to pop up, just add a bit more glue stick. This one will be okay because it's on top, but this bit underneath, if that shifted when I was sewing, then I might end up with a funny bunchy bit. I don't want funny bunchy bits. This is a cute little square with the red flowers, and like the line kind of reminds me of barbed wire, kind of, but it's quite sweet. So that's another wee square, so maybe we'll put that down here beside the big square. So when it comes to the sewing, I will pop the camera on pause, I will do the sewing, and then I'll come back and show you. So I've got the sewing machine all set up, ready. And the first thing that Snuggles did was hop on it and check everything out. And then she curled up and slept for a bit until I moved some stuff, and then she was like, well, that's a bit boring. You move some stuff. I'm off. I'm going now. So I don't know where she's gone, actually. She might have gone outside. It's actually a lovely day today. It's beautiful blue sky, which is just lovely. Yesterday was super cold. So this has got frayed edges, but I'm just going to leave them as is. I'm not going to fuss too much. It'll just add some variation, and they're not super like frayed, just a wee bit. Okay, this cute little scrappy bit. Yeah, can you see the colour theme? I can definitely see the colour theme. Oh, that was Snuggles just coming back in. So I was right, she had gone outside. Okay, it might be a bit big though. I don't want like super big areas of fabric. I want to, you know, mix it up so that we get snippets when we cut it into ephemera pieces. It's got a wee selvage there. I just want to get rid of that band along the edge that's kind of a bit more white. Just take it down a little. You know, I want it more varied, so each piece of ephemera has a bit of, you know, a bit of something going on, not just like ends up one piece of fabric. That would be a bit boring, wouldn't it? But if that's what you want to do, that is equally fine. It's just not what I'm going for. Now, just trying to work out the best place to put this. actually there probably works. Yep, let's pop it there. So I'm just using my base paper as a gluing sheet. I may need to grab out my glue pages when we start sort of running out of room, but for now it's okay. And the glue stick also helps you kind of flatten things out, because if you see the state of my fabric, it's, you know, it's all just been bunched up, so it's a little bit creased and wrinkled and stuff. So the glue stick helps flatten it out, so when I sew it, it should result, hopefully, in a better finish without too much buckling or humps and lumps. Because we've got to remember that we want people to be able to write on the back of these things once we've cut it up. Okay, so this one, that's a pretty, I love that pattern. It's really cool. Very, very cool. If you don't have many fabrics, another thing you can do, just this reminded me as I flip this over, is sometimes you can use the back side. This looks really cool on the wrong side. So if you just had a few different fabrics, you could alter the effect by turning a piece upside down. No reason why you can't do that. If it's, you know, if it's got a pattern and color on the other side, that doesn't obviously look like the wrong side. Now I've already got a square of that, but we can put another square somewhere. Maybe right there. I might just glue down that corner because that's going to be annoying. It's got quite a strong crease there. It wants to just pop up. So glue it down. Okay, do we want to add in this other piece that I took off? I think we could do that. We can do that down there. It's feeling so good to use up some of these scraps too. I've used a lot, but I've still got a lot to go. Right, maybe another bit of this grassy pattern. Oh, I think I'm going to, the strings are a bit tangled. So let's do a bit of trimming. The grass needs mowing, so let's mow some grass. That's one thing we haven't had to do for quite a while, is mow, because being in winter, things aren't, get a bit of a break from mowing, which is lovely. And we didn't do a lot of mowing at the end of summer either, because we weren't getting a lot of rain, so things had dried off and weren't growing either. So it's been quite a good break from hubby needing to get the lawnmower out. So come springtime, that'll be the time. And we're having some good rain lately. Whoops, that bit just didn't want to stick down. So I'm thinking that this spring is going to be humongous growth, depending on how warm it gets, like whether it gets the warmth for good growth. That will fit nicely there. Oops, a bit more glue showing above the plastic would be good. You might want to leave the glue to dry a little bit before you sew it. And don't worry about having to do it like all in the same thing, especially if you're slow stitching. I mean, that's not going to happen, is it? You'll need a bit of time to do that. But you know, you can do the collage and then another day do the sewing. Just make it fit your schedule and what you feel like doing, what you want to do. Because if you're like me, sewing requires me to actually get out the sewing machine and set it up and then break it all down again when I'm finished. I can't just leave it up because I don't have anywhere to leave it up currently. So I tend to save my sewing to do all at once. So I've already sewn 2 covers this morning. It's like, right, sewing machine's out. Let's get those covers that I need to get done. Let's do those. So I did those. Just pop that there. I love these cute wee squares that are already pre-cut for me. Very, very useful, I must say. So there will end up several layers of fabric in places. Right, do I want a bit of red? Since I've got a bit of a colourway happening, do I want red? There is kind of some reddish tones in it. This is quite bright red though. Oops. My fingers are so sticky, everything's sticking to them. All these wee threads I'm trying to get rid of. You can use whatever stitch you like to do your patchwork. You can use straight stitch or zigzag or a fancy stitch. Whatever your preference is. Maybe I'll put it there. Means we've got, I'm going to move to my glue pages, I think. Means we've got a few little squares together, but it's okay. Different patterns, different colours, so it'll be fine. It's little swans on this red bit. There is this wee strip of blue and green with a gold thread running through it. That's quite cool. It's introducing blue. Do we want blue? There's no other blue. Maybe we'll leave that, and if we end up with other blue then we might use it. But oh, there's scraps of paper in there. I have no idea why there's scraps of paper in there. This is pretty. Isn't that gorgeous? Let's use some of that. It's got some more red in it too. So definitely those reddy, you know, they kind of go well with brown, don't they? Red tones. So there's quite a few pops of red now happening. Oh, that's not quite wide enough there. Oops. So let's see if there's a better place for it. Maybe there. Let's go there. Okay, I'm just going to glue off to the side because it's a pain to keep dragging my glue book across so you can see me doing it. So you've already seen me glue a lot, so that's all I'll be doing off camera is just gluing. Oops, I should have done this before I glued it on because now I'm causing it to bunch. Go straighten it back out. It's all good. Right. Oh, this is a fabric I don't remember seeing before, but I must have seen it before. Beautiful deep black green with red, or a reddy brown and brown pattern. That's quite a big piece too. Look at that. Quite a bit of it. But let's take a chunk. Oh, I'm going to be covered in threads at the end of this. Let's just take a strip and then work out what size piece we need. As you get further in, like any collage, you kind of start working out what size pieces you need to try and to fill the gaps. Get off my finger. Annoying. Right, I'm looking at this bit over here. Do we want to put a bit here? So if we go there. turned it around just to see, but I think I prefer it this way. And got a little bit too much there, so let's take a snippet off and hope I haven't taken too much. Yep, that looks good to me. Oops, I didn't defluff the reverse side, and it's got a few fluffs hiding. There we go, got those off now. So this is going to be a problem. I can see it's going to pop up, so I'm just going to add an extra bit of glue in there, hold it down, and I might do the same here. If I can see that it's already popping up, I know that when I go to sew it, it's just going to provide me with issues. Right, so that corner is now complete. Okay, maybe we'll, okay, I can see another issue over here happening as the glue dries and kind of things pop up. You can start to see where you just need to add a little bit more. There. That's making me happier. Okay, so let's work on this patch here. We don't want another piece of that, it's too close. We've got this wee strip that we cut off. We'll just save that in case we need a little gap filled. That might be one I take to the machine in case I get any gaps appearing. I've got this odd shaped piece. I would prefer to go rectangle or square, I think, because that's what I've got going on. So I don't kind of want a random odd shape. Odd shapes can look cool, and I have done that before, but for this one, I just want straightish shapes. Oops, my apologies. So sorry. I completely forgot about my alarm. And Snuggles is back on the beside the sewing machine. And I'd left my phone over by the sewing machine, so I had to actually get up and so I could turn it off. It does happen. I do forget sometimes to turn it off before I set to record. Right, so I don't want that there because it's the same, so maybe will that fit there? No, not quite. Maybe down here. Let's do it down in that corner. So I'm not doing the patch I was intending, but that's okay. Right, that's popping up on me, so deal with that. Right, what else have we got that we can perhaps fill this part here? This one might be a good one. It's got little birdies on it. It's a lovely russety sort of colour, isn't it? Just trying to cut it down to a nice shape. This one's quite a thick fabric too compared to the rest. Not super thick, like it's not going to be a problem with this, but it's, yeah, and it's soft too. It's really soft. It's quite lovely. Yep, I think that would be quite nice there. Oh, it's got spots on the other side. It's actually a double-sided fabric, so it's got birds on this side and it's got little white dots on this side. It's kind of cool. So that's one that is actually designed to be double-sided. That's cool. We could use each side. Like I was saying, you know, turn over and use the reverse of the fabric if you need to vary your design. Yeah, little dots. Cool. This has got like a glue residue or something, maybe probably from interfacing, which I don't particularly want on anything. So I'm just going to discard those pieces. I've got that stuff on them. I'm tempted to use the spots, but I also like the birds better. So I'm just going to use the birds somewhere else. Maybe up here. That works for me. Again, pull the threads before you glue it. Do I ever learn? Yep, sticky fingers. Right, okay, what else do we have? Oh, what about this? That's kind of cool, isn't it? It's very wrinkled and creased, so it's going to need a bit of glue to hold it down in place and not drive me crazy. It's not straight, as in like it's wider up here than it is down here. That doesn't bother me so much. It's just those funky sort of weird angles that I'm not wanting. Okay, it's a little bit long, I feel. Let's just take another little snippet off that I can use as a patcher if needed while I'm sewing. So building myself up a few little options there. I'm not anticipating it will happen because I'm overlapping quite a bit, but you never know. I've thought that before in projects, and like by the time things move while you're sewing, I quite often have ended up with gaps, and it's like, oh, now I've got to put something else there. Ribbon or lace is another good option as well if you need to patch a little gap, and adds just a different element to things. Now that's a bit big. Maybe I just take a strip of it instead. Maybe I cut it in half. And once it's sewn, I can go around and pull any threads that are still problematic. You know, either a bit too furry for the look that I'm going for, or just have come loose and are lying on top of the project. Okay, that can go there. That will work nicely. I think I need to change out my glue page actually. Oops. So hopefully I'm on camera. I think I'm okay, apart from the gluing that I've been doing. Right, again, this one is all creased and wanting to pull up, so just putting a bit more glue on it. There will be some bunching that happens, and that's okay, you know, just don't panic about it. It will be okay. Just lay it out as best you can, sew it as flat as you can, but apart from that, don't stress. You know, just do it the best way possible. Now I've got this, but I'm feeling like it doesn't really go. It's a bit too, totally different vibe is what I'm trying to say. Totally different vibe. Here's some flax bushes and flax flower fabric, New Zealand flax, which is really cool. Again, it's got that red, pops of red in it for the flowers. So that would be a tiny scrap of fabric that's going straight in the bin, because there's no way I can do anything with that except maybe stuff it into something, which I'm not doing. So right, let's just cut a piece of this. I love this fabric. This is so pretty. we've got some furry bits happening on the side. Chop those off, and I'm getting debris on my collage here. Right. So maybe a piece down here would be good. Just trying to see where I might want to take it. We'll go about there. So yeah, I do know there's probably some people who aren't interested in doing a fabric masterboard, but I hope you still can enjoy the video and will enjoy seeing the results of it, and still pop along next week to see what I'm going to make with it, because you know, anything that we do with fabric can generally be done with paper, and vice versa. You know, there's ways you can adapt projects to suit you and what you like to do. Okay, do we want to put this? Yep, I think we'll put a little piece of that in that gap, and that will take care of that portion. Yep, I cut it right size, which is good. So I'm not going to be waiting for the glue to dry. I'm just going to be machine sewing, because I need to get this done. I've got to go out this afternoon, and it's probably going to take most of the afternoon. So yeah, I haven't got time or the luxury at the moment to let it dry. Okay, so we still haven't filled in this part that I was aiming to fill in, which is quite funny. I'm quite amused by myself. We've got one little bit of this left. Let's just pop it there because it fits. And then we've still got other gaps to fill, but as I said I was going to do this bit, I need to do this bit, because otherwise I might actually go to the sewing machine and have completely forgotten it. It's possible. Yep, it is possible. I know myself. Right, we're getting there. Okay, strip down here maybe of something. No, we can't use that one because that one's there. Maybe this one. Let's cut another piece off. Oh, that would actually go over the entire thing, and I think I'm going to do that. But I'll trim it down about here. Now you can do all straight edges in terms of matching up straight edges, and that is actually easier to sew if you like have it in blocks like a true patchwork, as if you were making a quilt or a cushion or something. It's definitely easier to sew, because you're just doing like zip, 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 and then the other way. But I like the more eclectic look. The more patchy, kind of overlapping randomness is what I like for this type of thing. So I've never actually done the straight lines where I could just do like dong, 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 dong. Although in saying that, it just occurred to me that you could do this style of patchworking fabric and then still sew it in straight lines. I've never done that. Now I'm thinking, should I do that? Because I've never actually done that. That might be an option. It might be an easier option. Right, so we've got that section all done. So just down here, we've got this little corner here. This one might, yes it will, work well there. Okay, that's that corner. That one's see-through, so it's just got a little bit of a border underneath it that's visible, which is fine. Right, do one another piece of this lovely fabric, just a maybe oriented differently, so it's not, it will end up on a different piece once it's all cut up, but just to change the direction, let's just pop that whole thing there. It's very curly. Glue stick, lots of glue stick. Oops, and I've got, too late. It was on the back of the fabric and now it's on my glue stick. So I don't want it on my glue stick for it to get transferred to who knows where or when. Right, that one can go there. I also didn't trim up this rough edge where I tore it out of the book because I knew I'd be trimming it up afterwards. Right, we're getting there. We're almost finished. Okay, let's see what else we've got in my pile. Well, that's pink. We've got no pink, so no to that bit. There's some red apples here. It's a nice pop of red. It's got a little bit of pinkiness in it, but it's definitely more about the red. So I think I'm quite happy. That would be cute about there, I think. Maybe we'll put it more over here so we haven't got like a straight line happening. That can be cute there. We do have a bit of a straight line happening here, which was accidental, but that's okay. I'm not going to fuss with it. It'll be okay. Right, we're kind of getting down now, like in my scraps, I'm hunting for things that are going to match, you know, well. I've got a bit of plain green here. Plain, except for all the fluff and threads stuck all over it. Maybe we'll do a bit of plain. Again, it's quite a reasonable size piece. It's actually got a pinked edge along one edge, but we haven't pinked anything else, so I'm just going to take a piece that's not pinked. Oops, that was not straight at all. It had a definite curve in the cut, the kick-handed way I was cutting it, so let's just straighten that up a bit. And maybe to about here. Yes, I know, I could have just cut it to the right size and straightened it all at the same time, but I didn't. So there you go. What are you going to do with me? Sometimes I take the long way round. Which reminds me, I don't know why it reminds me, but hubby announced last night that he wants to go to the city on Saturday. So we are heading into the city. We're going to check out a couple of their op shops that we went to last time we were in the city together. So that should be super fun. The place I got, did I show you the old newspapers? Or rather, hubby got them. And then yeah, I think I did. He's given me 3 so far out of the 9 that he bought. 3 of them are currently up with his mum and dad because they wanted to have a look at them. The remaining 3 are down beside his chair, which he's every now and then looking at, and I think possibly are the ones he'll keep. And I'm hoping that the 3 that are currently with his mum and dad, that they'll be ones that I'll end up with. Not sure yet. He hasn't kind of thoroughly been through them to let me know what I can utilize and what I can't. Right, hopefully this is still the right size. And yes, it is. Lovely little pop of reddy brown or browny red to try, you know, break up those greens that I've got going on. Because somehow I ended up with a grouping of greens. Just, you know, collage, sometimes that happens. Right, we are done, and I have a huge mess on my desk. So I'm going to pop the fabric back in the bag, which I've left down beside me. And I'm then going to take this to the sewing machine and sew it off camera, of course, as I mentioned. Whoops, some of the fabric's going on the floor, not in the bag. Not helpful. Making work for myself. And then I'll come back and show you how I've sewed it, what I've chosen to do, because I'm now kind of wondering which way I'm going to sew it, whether I try the method I haven't done of just doing straight lines. Oops, that's a little bit bunched up there. Or whether I do it the way that I normally do it, which is going around each piece. So doing rectangles around each piece, which is a really lovely way to keep it all nicely flat and have areas of the colour and pattern that aren't covered by stitching. But I am rather intrigued by the thought of doing just like zoom, 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 and of course around the edges as well. There will be further sewing, let me warn you, when we cut this up there will be further sewing required. Yes, there will be. So bear that in mind as well. But the effect is worth it. Like, it's a really lovely way to vary the ephemera, to give some extra texture and experience for the owner of the journal. So with that said, let me crack on and get the sewing done so I can come back and show you what we've got. Okay, I'll make it as quick as possible for you. It'll just be blink and I'll be back. See you soon. And I'm back. It is all sewn. I can't tell you how long it took. One, because I didn't make note of the time, and two, I fed the fire, I had a bathroom break, I made myself a cup of coffee, I had a snack. You know, I did life in between as well as sewing this. So this is obviously the back side. I did start doing the just up and down, and it came to doing a cross, and I was like, no, this isn't me, this isn't working for me, it's not how I want it to be. So I kind of ended up going around the pieces, not like I would normally, but like where I had edges that weren't caught by the stitching this way, I then went back and did some. So it probably took me slightly longer than what it would have if I'd just gone around each piece like I would normally. So I'm glad I gave it a go, because now I know that I prefer just to sew around each piece. I don't mind the messy look. It's very messy, partly because I did do that, and they're not straight, and I didn't worry that they weren't straight, and they're different widths apart, these vertical lines. That doesn't worry me. It's just I prefer the look of how I normally do it, where I go around each piece and then I kind of work backwards and forwards. I will go back over some lines sewing where I need to, and then at some points, if I've kind of done a section and there's no more in this section until across the other side, then I'll cut the cotton and just move the whole thing over. So just find your own way, whatever suits you. At the end of the day, I think it looks cool, and I'm pleased with it. Definitely was worth giving a go, that different method, and as I said, now I know. The back is a little bit lumpy bumpy because of the sewing. So I typically don't back stitch on these things because they're going to be backed, and the backing will hold the stitching in place, and it eliminates a bit more of that bumpiness. And I had a little machine ops where it kind of did a little funky thing, so I just kind of trimmed off the excess again to reduce the lumpy bumpies. It's a little bit bumpy, but it's not too bad. But to back it, I do choose a thicker weight paper, and interestingly enough, the book page is bigger. I did not check. So we have some excess here. I could either put more paper on or just cut it down to the A4 size. And I think I'll just cut it down to the A4 size because I will be sewing once I cut it into pieces next week. When I cut it into pieces, I will be sewing because we'll have loose edges. So I'm not going to worry about sewing it. Now I'll put this on. Let's get that done. So I'm going to give a good coating of glue stick and some tacky glue so that it gets it down and amongst all that stitching. And then I'll fix up that edge when I cut it into pieces next week. So there'll be more sewing next week, people, as I mentioned in the first part of this video. Because once you cut it, there will be edges that you will need to sew to keep them all intact. We don't want the inside of our ephemera to be showing, do we? You know, the layers in between. We want it all nicely sealed down. Okay. Glue stick. Kind of almost tempted to grab my big bottle of tacky glue, but I don't think there's much left in it, and I think I'd spend more time trying to get it out than if I just, you know, give a good dose with the little bottle. Oops, don't go off the paper though. And again, when I cut it into pieces, I'll probably go in around the edges and put some more glue as well as the sewing, just to get into the interior, if you like. If there's any pop-ups happening. The sewing would be sufficient, but, you know, I like to hedge my bets. So this is a 120 GSM, 120. So I like to use this because it helps smooth out some of those bumps for writing on, so that it's not so textured. You can still feel them, absolutely still feel those lines of stitching, but it's just a little bit easier to write on with the thicker paper. So my recommendation is choose a thicker paper for your backing than perhaps what you might use normally. Of course, if you choose to use this as pockets, you don't necessarily need to back it. So there is that as well. There's other things. You could use it as belly bands, as pockets. I'm not actually sure what I'm going to do for my project next week with it, so maybe I'll do some of those. We shall see. I don't think I've done pockets yet, have I? I don't think I've done belly bands. So that's it backed. All I need to do is trim it down to the edge of this backing paper. And then next week we're all ready to go to start making ephemera with it. So that's the monthly Masterboard challenge for July. I hope you're keen to give it a go in whichever way is possible or suitable or your preference. You know, just jump in, give it a go, even if it's with paper. Even if it's with fabric but only glue or double-sided tape or whatever you find the best to use with fabric. It's just fun, guys. Fun to add that texture. Okay, have a fantastic weekend, my friends. I'm looking forward to a day out, and the Margaret Miller challenge video is already done and loaded up, so that will be good to go on Saturday morning. So I shall see you on Monday for the Deal It Up challenge. I'll catch you then. Bye for now.